The Mishnah says, we know, the Talmud says, person who saves a life saves a universe. And it explains why. Not just because a human being is so powerful, it's because the human being is also generations. Generations. Actually, he brings there the example of in a negative way, when Cain killed Hevel, Cain killed Abel, right? In the beginning of the story of Genesis, it says he didn't destroy Abel, he destroyed all the generations, all the progeny, all the children that would come from Hevel. And of course, on the positive side, it's not just saving a life. You don't know what kind of impact it has for generations and generations. This is in all times now, especially today, when we're dealing with these deep challenges, really unprecedented. I hear it from both the medical profession, both on every possible level. There are literally unprecedented, uncharted territory, and a deep unknown. So that only adds to the challenges that we're facing. So I want to share a few words about the actual challenges that I believe that you're facing in your particular line of work, and myself as well in a certain way, and some suggestions, ideas, thoughts. One of the, I'll just share a short story. The story is with his name was from Meir Meprim Mishlan. It's one of the tzaddikim, one of the Hasidic masters in the 18th century, 19th century rather. He was once in a city, in a town, and he wanted to go to the mikveh, the ritual bath. Then it was allowed, obviously. There was no pandemic going on. But it was winter, and the mikveh was a place that was very difficult to reach. You had to go through a hill, a very slippery slope. So most people just didn't use it during the winter because it was too icy. But he, though he was an elderly man, he went down the mountain and went to the mikveh, came back. Two of the young people were skeptical. How could he do that? And they followed him. And they slipped and then broke an arm, and this one, whatever. But he was able to go unscathed as if he was walking on a plain, flat ground that was not slippery at all. Afterwards, they asked him, how are you able to maintain that type of equilibrium, that type of balance? You're not a young man. And he said an expression, I'll say it in Yiddish and then I'll translate. He said, amidst eben, falten nicht unten. When you're bound above, you don't fall below. One of the most important principles in life is that we are never in anything alone. The hardest thing is to deal with a challenge, is not the challenge. And I'm sure you've seen this. When you're dealing with, let's say, a patient or someone who's in a disease or an illness, there's the difficulty of the illness, but then there's the demoralization that comes if they feel they're alone. If they have no visitors, if they have no guests, if they have no one's sharing any kind words, people give up. It affects their immunity system even. If you see someone has no one coming to see them, you don't have the fight in you. On the other hand, when you have family, you have friends, you have love, people send you gifts, show care and concern, and it's proven today, actually has an effect, a psychosomatic effect on the immunity and on the will to fight and on the adrenaline and other chemicals that make a person stronger. So we, all of us, especially yourselves who are on the front lines, are dealing literally, you're like in the front line of a war. There's blood in the streets. And I don't mean to be dramatic, it's the fact that people have died, young people, elderly people, literally an epidemic, a pandemic. People are suffering, people are struggling for life right now. You see it on a daily basis, the trauma. So how does a human being have the strength to deal with that? So when things are going, you're just so consumed with an emergency, you don't have time to think. But then you come home, we all need to rest, we need to step back. And the answer is we're tied above. We realize that we're connected to something greater than ourselves, and that in turn gives us strength. And let me elaborate. Just the Jewish people, we're blessed to be the Jewish people. Do you know how many leaders look to the secrets of Jewish endurance? How is it possible? Just to pose the question that 3,800 years of history, Avram Avinu, Abraham lived 3,800 years ago on this earth. Okay, he originated in the area, what is modern day southeastern Iraq, went on his journey with his wife Sarah, and with that began the Jewish journey. How many persecutions, executions, holocausts, pogroms, crusades, expulsions have we, the Jewish people, gone through? You can't even count. You start with Egypt, then you move on to the Assyrians, you move on to the Babylonians, and then the Persians, and the Greeks, and the Romans, then the Ottoman Empire. I mean, history is fraught with Jewish persecution, one way or another. And of course, our own Holocaust just 70 years ago. So here's a simple question that every businessman asks. What's their secret? How did they endure? How did they make it through? What are the odds that they would survive, not just survive, but be a thriving nation, intelligent, and yes, limping, wounded, scarred, hurt, but here we are. Everyone wonders that. And I'm putting it literally in a, almost like a, I would say, scientific or business-like question. You want to know how something can endure for so long. What's our answer? A few weeks ago, we celebrated Pesach, Passover, and we said it in one prayer. We said, V'hi sha'amdalanu. Something helped us withstand, endure. What was that something? It was our faith. It was our connection tied above. So even though b'chol dar v'dar, in every generation, we had different forces that tried to vanquish and annihilate us, this doesn't just mean Egyptians and human beings. It could also mean pandemics and epidemics and diseases and illnesses and every generation. And yet, Kadosh Baruch Hu, God saved us. So essentially, the key to all growth and success is you're not in it alone. You have a higher force. You're dedicated. You're essentially God's ambassador. So let me just add a little emphasis to that, because this is something that I find a lot of us don't even focus on. Who put us on earth? Why are we born in this century? And we're living now in 2020 during this historical pandemic. Why weren't we born 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago? Why are you in Hatzalah? Why is anybody doing whatever they do? You may think you made the choices. It's not so simple. There's a thing called divine providence. You didn't choose when to come to this world. God sent your soul to this world on a mission. You're a messenger. You're an ambassador. You're an ambassador that is carrying out a message, a mission that's greater than you are. Now, many people forget that. They get focused on me. What's in it for me? And they think their life is all egocentric, self-interest. Today, everybody's gotten a wake-up call around that. But the fact of the matter is, people of service, public service, and especially people who are on the line, the front line to help and save others, that's exactly why are you doing this? Of course, there's a deep satisfaction helping others. It's because you were sent here, and you were sent on a mission, and you were given all the strength you need to fulfill it. That's critical to remember. If you think it's going to be your own resources that will get you through trauma, or through challenges, or moments of weakness, that's a big mistake. It's recognizing that I am an agent, and the one who sent me is giving me strength. I'm on a mission. And that's a vital, vital component. I'll just share a story that happened with my father in 1989. It was Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. He's already passed away 15 years ago, but he had a mini stroke, ended up in the hospital for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Not very pleasant. I live in Crown Heights. So I went, the Lubavitcher Rebbe called me to give me lekach, sweet honey cake, to give to my father. And he told me the following words, which I'll never forget. He said, tell your father that he should have a sweet and a healthy year. And then he added with a smile, he says, tell him that when he finishes the mission for which he was sent to the hospital, he will be released. I went straight to, it was Brookdale, I don't remember where it was. I brought the cake, I told my father, interesting, who goes to a hospital? No one goes for sightseeing tour there. You're not going for adventures and fun. You go because there's no choice. And yet, here is the wisdom that anywhere you go in life, you're on a mission. And you finish the mission, you will be released. This is a tremendous thought, and especially relevant to you guys all. Why? You're on a mission. You're not there alone. You were sent there. So you have to find ways, and we'll talk about that, how to connect to that source, how to connect to something greater than yourself, which gives you more strength than you'll ever be able to find on your own. When you're able to access that, new strengths emerge. One key point. Second point I want to make. They tell a parable, a story, a metaphor. These two guys got lost in the woods. One was a heavy-set man, one was a very frail individual. And it was a very cold, frosty night. Started snowing. And they had nowhere to go, and it was getting colder and colder. The frail person began to faint. He fell in the snow. His colleague, his friend, didn't abandon him. He bent down, and he began to massage him and try to get his blood circulating and just keep him warm. Meanwhile, the night got colder, and the heavier set man began to also faint. Miraculously, they were both saved. They were brought into a little inn near a fireplace. They warmed up, and thank God there was no frostbite. They lived. The thinner man goes over to the heavier set man and says, "I have to thank you." "Why are you thanking me?" "Because you saved my life. You could have just ran away and left me in the snow. You did everything possible to keep me going." And the heavier set man said to the frail man, he said, "I have to thank you." He says, "Why do you have to thank me? You saved my life." He says, "No, because if I had not exerted myself to massage your muscles and your blood vessels and so on, I too would have fainted earlier. It was because of you I had to work harder." It's another tremendous lesson that often when we inspire someone else or we save someone else, it really saves us. This doesn't take away from what you've done for another. We're not minimizing that, but it's important to know what you're getting in return. And I believe these two principles that I just shared, the idea that we have strengths coming from a greater place, and there are ways to access it, which I will mention shortly. And number two, that you actually get warmer. There are people who, I don't want to speak negatively, that they're busy with themselves. Self-interest, as I mentioned before. And they may be very comfortable. They sleep nicely in bed at night. They don't have to run in the middle of the night to an emergency call. They don't have to look at pain and suffering every moment. They don't have to see people crying and bleeding and families distraught, praying. They're comfortable. But I can tell you that their hearts are not as warm as yours are, because the fact that you're helping another is warming you in ways that you probably don't even know the extent. And yet, as Josh said at the outset, Hillel made a very important statement. He said, he didn't begin in saying, we're just here to serve others. He began, Im ein ani li, mili. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? And then he added, Im ani la'atzmi, if I'm only for myself, what am I? So as much as you're public servants and doing a tremendous job beyond words, saving lives, sometimes at a heavy price and risk, but there's also im ein ani li mili. A human being cannot help another if they themselves are not strong. So the focus of our discussion here, and I'd love to hear, soon we'll be dealing with questions, hopefully get some of your questions, is so how do we strengthen that inner self so we can be stronger for ourselves and then, of course, be stronger when we deal with others. So again, there's a 3,800 year formula. We don't need to recreate the wheel. What did give Jewish people the strength? What gave them the strength? They knew they were on a mission. They knew that God was leading them, so he gave them strength. But they actually did things that nourished them. Like anything, just like you need physical exercise, just like you need good hygiene, just like you need good nourishment, food, drink, that's for the body. The soul also needs nourishment. How does one nourish the soul? How does one nourish the human spirit, the Jewish spirit? So there are three ways. We're told there are three pillars that really upon which the entire universe stands, and upon the small universe, the microcosm of the human being stands. And I'll just use an acronym. The acronym is your spiritual spa, SPA. 3 SPA. Those of you familiar with the Pirkei Avos, with Ethics of the Fathers, know that there's Gimel Shloisha Dvarim on 3 pillars, the entire world and human being rests: Torah, Avoda, Gemilas Chasadim. Study, service, which is prayer, and actions, good deeds. There you have the spa: study, prayer, and actions. These are pillars that when you know how to use these tools, they actually feed your soul and connect it to its source. So when you're tied above, you don't fall below. And I don't mean study now. Let's just go through them quickly. I don't mean study lip service. You sit down, you read the Daf Yomi, or you learn the Parsha or something. I mean in an internalized way where you feel you're reading a few words of the chapter, the Torah, or from the Talmud or somewhere else. Personalize it. Make it yours. So you can say, wow, this I'm learning the divine wisdom that speaks to me. A lesson that is relevant to our times. I'll just give an example. I've been using this verse all the time lately because for obvious reasons. Talk about the 3,800 year secret formula. When the Jews were in Egypt, they were suffering greatly. So there's a verse right in the beginning of Exodus, of Shmos. Kashayanu Esam, as they were afflicted, as they were oppressed, in direct proportion to that, Ken Yirba v'Chen Yifritz. They flourished and they thrived. In other words, oppression brought the best out of them. What people say today, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So there's a verse. You study it. That's called studying Torah because you're applying it to life today. The second pillar is prayer. Many of us have never been taught to pray. It's a lip service. For many of us, it's lip service. Prayer, especially today, many people are beginning to appreciate. You know what prayer is? Avodah Shebelev. It's emotional intelligence. It's learning to emote. It's learning to close your eyes, block out everything for a few moments, and speak to God through your soul. And speak from your heart, as you would speak to your father or mother, and say, look what's happening here. People are suffering. I'm seeing it. I'm crying. I'm weak. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed. Give me strength. This is an emotional plea. So if the Torah speaks to the mind, it's cognitive, the prayer speaks to the heart. And then there's the third thing, which you have an abundance of. Gemilas chasodim. Acts of good, not just the mind, cognitive, emotional conditioning, it's also action-based. It comes down to you, to people, everyone that you help, you save, you protect, whatever it is that you're doing, all that is part of Gemilas Chasadim. The point I'm emphasizing is not just that three important things survived and thrived, is because they never lost their commitment to these nourishing and nurturing tools that allowed them to feed themselves. So whatever challenge, sum up our connection to above, an element of faith and trust, knowing that we're on a mission, on a daily, say, Moda, thank you for returning my soul to me. Think about it. Say it with your children if you're in that situation, if your children are that age. Say it with yourself. The key is giving yourself time. Obviously, if you're called an emergency, you have to do what you have to do, but we all have some time, and focus on nourishing yourself. To make it a little stronger, do it with another. Find a partner. It makes it a lot easier because then you're dependent on each other. You keep yourselves both accountable. Today we have Zoom. We have other ways of communicating by phone, by texting, by social media, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to just sum up, and then we're going to take this to the next stage, which is questions that are going to be asked. I want to just sum up and say, you are the greatest and the best of the Jewish people. History will testify when we look back at 2020, and we'll know there was a big pandemic and it took lives and there was a lot of tragedy, but it will be remembered for also the nobility and the dignity of the human spirit of all individuals that have shown unbelievable acts of kindness, generosity, volunteering, but above all, yourself. Forever, both in Shemayim in heaven and on earth, will be remembered what you did in this emergency time, what you do all the time, but now more than ever because of its amplified and pronounced fashion, affecting so many of us so much more than ever before. And I'm not saying it to flatter you. The schus, the merit of warming, of preserving, of protecting, of saving lives is something that the rewards, the fruits that will bear will be forever and ever to you and your families and your children and grandchildren. And the key is to always remember that. Do not let the crisis outside of us affect us. Because remember, we cannot control events going on around us, but we can control our attitude. We can completely control what our attitude will be. And when you know that you're on a mission, and every morning you remind yourself, and you know that the one who sent you, your messenger, the one who dispatched you, called God, is giving you strength, and you are feeding yourself with that awareness, cognitively, emotionally, and action-based, I assure you, that will give you tremendous amount of strength. There's still going to be strain and tension and challenges. Let's not kid ourselves. There's plenty of pain out there, and we're still human beings. But we're always looking for that edge. And we have behind us 3,800 years of history. We are like a marathon. We're midgets that stand on the shoulders of giants. When we're tied above, remember, you don't fall below. Connect to others, connect to our generations, connect to our ancestors, and that gives us the strength to keep the march going until we finally come to the point that we always prayed and hoped for, where we come to Mashiach's times, complete Geula, where there'll be healing, eradication of all toxins, eradication of all illness and disease, complete healing, and only a healthy and beautiful life forever and ever. You know, of course, Viktor Frankl turned logotherapy into a mainstream psychological approach, which is really Torah-based. Like he put it, that when you have a why for life, you can deal with any what. Basically, if you have a purpose in life, you can deal with any challenge. And he witnessed it in the Holocaust. I think to really frame it in sharp terms, we always have a tendency, people, human beings, to ask why. Why did this happen to me? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why do the wicked prosper? Why did 6 million innocent Jews, 1.5 million innocent children were gassed and exterminated? The big why. The wise answer of Jews have always been, we never really know why. That's God's mysterious domain. There was a great tzaddik who was a Holocaust survivor. I think it was the old Belzer Rebbe or the Klausenberg Rebbe, I'm not sure who. He said, even if God were to tell me why it happened, I wouldn't want to hear. You think I want to hear a justification that 1.5 million little children, boys and girls, were gassed? So the why, we never really ask why, because we don't have an answer to that. You'll see again, time and again in the Torah and in Jewish history, when there was tragedy, the children of Aaron was silent. When the angels came and said, when the 10 martyrs were being barbarically killed by the Romans, God said, be silent. Silence was the answer because it's the most appropriate answer for tragedies that are beyond our scope. The mind cannot understand these mysteries. But Jews asked a different question, and far more healthier question. Not why, but what can we do about it? If you dwell on the why, it will overwhelm you because you'll never have an answer. How do you answer a mother who's just lost a little child for no reason, senseless seeming? How do you explain why some people here are struggling and died due to this coronavirus? We don't have an answer. And if you spend time asking why, you will not be able to get out of that quagmire. However, we ask, what can we do about it? That's the question we've asked. And if you go to Jewish history, you'll see that was how we rebuilt. What happened after the Holocaust? What happened? Everyone thought the Jewish people are over with. 6 out of 18 million Jews were killed, a third of our nation. The best and the brightest, teachers, rabbis, leaders, the entire European Jewish community for over 1,000 years, more, Eastern Europe, Russia. America's assimilation was taking over, ravaging the Jewish world. Everyone thought that was it. You read obituaries in 1945 and 1950, they say there won't be Jews after 1990. They're going to die out. What changed? What happened? We did not ask why. We don't know why. But we did not allow ourselves to succumb. It's like they say, that we don't know why, but we're going to do something about it. We are not going to be demoralized. We're going to build and build and build. And we did not take revenge on the Germans by blowing up their cafes. Every Holocaust survivor will tell you, our revenge. They'll open up a wedding, a photo album. My children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. And you ask them, but how did you get over the question, the anger against God, that he allowed this to happen? And they'll say, I don't have an answer. I just knew I was not going to sink. I was going to swim. So that is a brilliance beyond brilliance, because it's not philosophical. It's just a gut instinct that we may have suffered, but we're not sufferers. We're not victims. That's the key thing. Things happen to us. And sometimes tragic things happen. Sometimes horrible things. But we never identify with that horror. I am not going to become identified by my suffering. I suffered. I identify with my noble values and virtues. So frankly, when we see all this suffering, we have to remember that. What am I going to do about it? How am I going to help people right now? How am I going to help myself, my family? And we never, then the why remains a mystery. The what is the key. We don't say why, we say, what are we going to do about it? I look at right now, I see anyone who's serving is far stronger place than people who are just sitting, watching the news and press conferences and why did this happen and when is it going to end? Those that dwell on their comforts or discomforts are not doing very well. The best people doing right now, it's not because there's less virus out there, but the ones that have some type of equilibrium, some type of inner composure, is those that are serving and not focusing on themselves, but really helping others. What can I do? Rising to the occasion. That's how I would respond to that question.
Yeah, thank you. A lot of great wisdom there. Yeah, I think over the past couple of weeks, we've really seen a very close interplay between the human and the divine. The divine, Hashem put this virus here, basically this tiny little thing that we can't see, we can't feel really until, it's affecting our bodies. It's, this microscopic little thing. And then on the other hand, we as humans are working so hard to kind of counter this. It swept across our world and affected millions, as we know, and we've really seen firsthand the devastation. It has definitely shaken our beliefs and certainly our rituals. We're no longer able to go to shul in the same way. We're not able to read from the Torah. There's so many different aspects of our religious and ritual life that's kind of been taken out from us. And if we look at the whole world, there's been many things, if we look at the general population, things that people hold near and dear. A lot of the materialistic things, they're just gone, basically taken out completely from under us with the whole economy shutting down and everything. As we continue forward, how are we able to meaningfully interact with Hashem, our religion, our spiritual side, when we don't have these rituals and these religious practices that we've been so used to?
An excellent question. And I'll respond quite bluntly, if I may. There's an expression in Jewish thought. It's actually a verse in the prophets. It's called Mitzvahs anoshim milumada. It means doing mitzvahs by rote, mechanically, robotically. Today, what's happening is the usual comfort zones, security blankets, crutches, structures, institutions, conventions, and I include the religious ones, synagogues, shuls, minyans, the Kaddish, aliyahs, everything that, a bris, a wedding, it's all been changed. The comfortable way, the way we celebrated Judaism, Pesach. People had plans. You know how many Jews go away for Pesach programs? All gone. We had plans to be with our families, to travel, not whatever, everyone had their thing. Well, Hashem pulled a quick one, and God showed that we're not in control, He's in control. So you can either say, oh boy, this is too much for me. You can retreat in fear, or you can do as I said, you can rise to the occasion and say, you know what? Maybe this is an opportunity to figure out what my relationship with God is really when stripped from. I can't go to shul. But it doesn't mean you can't speak to God in your home. Yeah, it's not your comfort zone. It's much easier to just be with a minyan, a kiddush club, your friends, socialize. But you know what? God said your mission, I mentioned before, your mission is now to be home. except when you need to go out to help others as you do. Your mission is to be home. So maybe it's an opportunity to daven in a real way. You can't rely on anything else. I said this right before Pesach. I said it's an opportunity to do a Seder perhaps like we've never done before. Now you'll say it's not comfortable. Fine, you know something? All excellence happens when you're out of your comfort zone. So I would say, succinctly, I would say, for the Jewish people, and especially for the religious Jewish world, this is an opportunity of a lifetime to create a real relationship with God, not one based on culture, on rituals, and on past routines and patterns. I'm not taking away from that. There's a beauty to that. I'm not denying it. And we'd all love to have that. But right now, we have to find innovative, creative ways to speak to God that you cannot rely on the rabbi's sermon or a shir you'd go to. Now you have to figure it out from your home, online. Shabbos, you have to maybe learn in a way that you've never learned before. So I see this as an opportunity to revisit and renew our contract with God in a new way. Same Torah, same mitzvahs, but without the external support that we usually have. And that can either be a challenge that people say, I don't know what to do, or we rise to the occasion. I have seen this, and I think this is what we need to encourage each other. This is the time to have a real, it's not mechanical Judaism. It's not just lip service, saying words, or just doing something routine-wise. Being a little more conscientious, a little more deliberate in the way we do a mitzvah. Remember, we don't take things for granted in times like this. I'll say one more thing. Someone just told me the other day, he said, I never appreciated the medrash that says that every breath you take, you're supposed to thank God. David HaMelech, at the end of Tehillim, it says, Kol neshama tahalelka. For every soul that praises God. Says the medrash, what does that mean? Neshama, soul, comes from the same word as neshima, breath. Remember, the soul of a human being is vayipak ba'apav nishmas chayim. God breathed the divine breath into the nostrils of Adam. So soul and breath are one. So the Midrash says, thank God for every breath. He says, now I have a cousin. He actually works in the medical community. And I see him struggling. He's on a respirator, ventilator. And he's struggling to breathe. And suddenly I said to myself, you know what? I don't even appreciate it. 15, 18 times a day, a minute we breathe. Every breath is a blessing. You know how many things have to work right to breathe? So what I'm saying is that when things are challenged, you suddenly appreciate the things we took for granted, including our Judaism. So it's an opportunity and a time to really become a far more real and far more sincere and true Jew. What I mean by that, we're all true Jews, but I mean the commitment, a relationship with God in a real way, not a mechanical one. Just like we have to develop a new approach to relationship with our spouses, because now you can't just rely on the regular, we'll go out to dinner, let's go to a party, let's go to an event. You now have to figure out how to do it in a very natural way, eye to eye, soul to soul contact.
Yeah, so true. And I think one of the things I learned from the virus is, everything we touch, the impact, we have such an impact with everything we touch. And, we touch the doorknob, we touch our face, we touch the countertops, we could be spreading this virus around. And when we really think about the impact, that every tiny thing that we touch really could have a huge impact. And it's not only on the one person that then picks up the virus, it's on the person that picks it up from that person. And we see, it started from one person in one place, and it affected the entire world.
And we learn from that in the good side, meruba midat tova, every good deed also has a ripple butterfly effect on the whole. That's a very powerful question. It's, of course, the basis of so much of psychology. What do you do with negative thoughts, depression, thoughts that bring you down? So here again is the interesting thing. It's like happiness. They say as soon as you're seeking happiness, you'll never find it. It's when you do the right things in life, happiness is the outgrowth, is the product of that, the result. The same thing is here. If you're going to try to fight a negative thought, let's just visualize it. Let's say you're going to bring a crowbar, a hammer, some weapons, and you're going to fight negative thoughts. We know that's not going to work. You can't fight darkness with weapons. How do you fight darkness? By bringing in light. The classic Jewish approach from the beginning of time has always been, we don't fight negativity with negativity. We fight negativity with positivity. So when you're having a negative thought, you know what you should be doing? going and doing something positive, distracting yourself. I know you think it's much easier. Can I just extract the negative thought from our mind? No, you're not going to be able to just extract it. What you have to do is bring in something positive. And that automatically, a little light dispels a lot of darkness. You look through entire Torah, the entire Chazal, entire Jewish history, you'll see it was always the approach. This doesn't mean we deny or ignore. We're not escapism. We know there's darkness. We know there's a negative thought. But the only real way to ultimately deal with it is to bring in something positive. Now, the challenge is that the negative thoughts is so overwhelming, you can't even bring yourself. You're so paralyzed or lethargic, you can't even bring yourself to wake up or get out of bed. So then you may need help. You may need to have a friend. You may need to have a mentor. You may need other types of intervention to help you. But the goal is to ultimately, let's talk about the virus. What's ultimately the way this virus will be eradicated? It's through antibodies. Yes, the vaccine may help at some point, but at the end of the day, is the body builds up enough positive energy to strengthen the immunity to the virus. It's not, if we had a vaccine, we can fight the virus and keep it at bay or eradicate it. But ultimately, true immunity happens when you become much stronger in the process, and that strength overwhelms the weakness. So my point is, psychologically, it's also true. A negative thought is fought by not fighting the negative thought, it's by bringing in something positive. I go even a step further, that for every negative thought, you should bring in 3 positive thoughts and 3 positive actions. Because for some reason, when a person loses $1,000 and then they win $1,000, it doesn't cancel out. You need to win around $3,000, $4,000 to have enough pleasure that cancels out the pain of losing. For some reason, maybe it's a sense of entitlement. So that's what I would do. It's really it's a trade secret, but this is the key to success. You know, they say think good and it will be good. That positive thought, positive psychology, positivism is the best way to fight any negative element.
Yeah, absolutely. And this stuff is proven scientifically as well. Barbara Fredrickson in her book Positivity discusses this 3 positive thoughts to 1 negative thought. Right. Daniel Kahneman in his book Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow discussed the loss aversion that you were describing. These are based on experiments and studies that have designed in both great books to kind of look at as well.
Let me just interject right here on this Zoom conference. We could have been sitting and talking about every trauma and every negative feeling. That's not the way to go. We all know that. The goal is what positivity can we bring in? What connectivity, love, unity, positive thinking. That's the way. That is the way. Look, I have to say, I go back to the medrash I quoted about every breath. When you focus, they say like, stop to smell the roses. When you focus on life and not take it for granted, every iota, every cell, every fiber of existence is a miracle. Actually, we're all miracles. Think about where our grandparents and great-grandparents were 100 years ago. How did they get out? Whether they got out from the Holocaust survivors or survivors of Stalin and so on. We are miracles. The Baal Shem Tov, the great Hasidic founder of Hasidism, has a great statement. He says, the difference between a miracle and a natural event is only one thing: frequency. If the sun were to rise once in our lifetimes, we'd all think, wow, what a miracle. We'd come out with camera crews. But it happens every day, so we get accustomed. We need a new rush of excitement. If one child was born healthy in all of history, it would be a miracle. Well, you have millions of children being born. So we recognize the miracle for the moment, but then routine takes over. So the truth is, miracles are simply, nature is actually a bunch of miracles just happening in a perpetual way. So we think it's just nature. Like, you know, the sun rose, I'm breathing, I'm chewing and digesting. Anyone in the medical world knows what kind of miracle that is. So just because something happens many times in a row, it doesn't make it less of a miracle. The wise person steps back and appreciates the gift. So the way to do it is really our own attitude, our own focus. That's why I believe this time that we're in, this pandemic, the opportunity, I tell you from my own experience, I see it, the receptivity, the vulnerability of people, because they can't rely on their usual as I mentioned, security blankets and comfort zones and structures is unbelievable. They're looking they're appreciating things they never appreciated before. You suddenly appreciate, someone told me the other day, I never knew my son and daughter had such creative skills. I was too busy. I did a little homework with them. So that idea to pause and just appreciate the moment, the breath, the walk, the people you love, the fact that we are healthy is something that's in our choice. At the end of the day, it's your choice. You can either take things for granted and move on and just say, okay, let's move on, or realize that nature is really just a walking miracle happening again and again. Okay, very good question. I'll use an example from business. Any good business every business needs a mission statement. The mission statement is short, unique, and really the hub that connects all the activities. Let's say Google has 120,000 employees, and their mission statement is to organize all the information of the world and make it readily accessible. So most of us live fragmented lives, which means there's our family life, there's our career, there's our volunteer work, there's our entertainment. It's a bunch of details. So I would make a simple suggestion. Take a piece of paper, and when you have a little free time, and write down all the details, everything that you did today, from morning till night. And then try to connect, make a thread, and you'll find that very few are connected with each other. So how do you make order out of disorder? Is you take fragments and you connect them all to some purpose. For the Jew, the answer is very straightforward. We're here to serve. Whether you're tying your shoelaces, or you're eating breakfast, or you're running out on an emergency call, or you're speaking to your children, or you're doing something else, it's all God says. It says, everything God created in the world was to honor God, to serve. And that becomes the common denominator, the thread that connects. So it really comes down to what is your mission in life, and connecting as much as what you do with that mission. That's where you take fragments and you turn them into a unified story. It's like taking a bunch of little pieces and turning it into a narrative. And that's something which is the essence of what the whole Torah Mitzvahs is about. It's to make order in a disorganized life, and order in a unstructured life by directing it. Like when it comes Shabbos, what are we saying on Shabbos? That all my work for the 6 days is now being elevated, is all being spiritualized. There's a focal point. And my life is not just scattered and fragmented in 1,000 different directions, different people and things tugging at me. This one wants this one. It's focused toward some higher purpose. Everybody has to find that higher purpose and mission. It's one of the things I work on a lot in the Meaningful Life Center. If you go to meaningfullife.com, you can actually look at how do I find my mission statement. And if you send me your email address, put it there. I'll be happy to send you the link. It actually is a whole steps how you actually discover your mission, which is the key to creating unity among all the details of our lives. I would just add a little Torah perspective, which supports what you're saying, Josh. And that is, there's an expression in the Talmud that says that God gave a permission to a refa, to a healer, to heal. Why do you need permission? Because God's the healer. Ani Hashem refech. God is the healer. God gives life. He takes life. He causes disease, and he's the healer. The fact that he gives human beings the right to heal is a gift. That he says, I will bestow the human race with the ability to heal another. Even though all humans are mortal, yet I'll give mortal human beings the power of healing of another mortal. Why am I saying it? Because we have to know it's a partnership with God. We're human beings. We're not perfect. When you know you've done whatever you could do, and sometimes there'll be mistakes, you have to also realize there's a partner called God. Sometimes you'll do the right thing and God says, you know what? The time has come. It's not going to work the way you thought it's going to work. Sometimes you'll do everything wrong, or not everything, but you make mistakes and God will intervene. So I think it's important to realize it's not on you to finish everything. You have to make your effort as best as you can. That has always been the Jewish way. We do what we can, and then the rest we hope that God will do what he can. If we make a mistake, we can learn from it. But guilt should not come into play here, because guilt is only demoralizing. If the guilt doesn't motivate you to become better, then it's just a force of a negative voice inside of you, just demoralizing you. It doesn't have any positive benefit. If it makes you become better, like you say, okay, next time I'll do it a little differently, then you've grown through the mistake, through the error, if there was an error. But the guilt has no place here. You have to know you have given the permission. God is working through you in healing. You're not the healer. You're just the channel. You're the conduit. And every good doctor knows that. Doctors, especially when they're humble. And it's God that's doing it, and we're working together. And I think that creates a little more peace of mind. Obviously, nobody wants to see somebody do all the efforts and the person ends up dying or ends up hurt or injured for permanently or something like that. Of course, we can't, it's very difficult. But we're talking about our effort. Look, that's that's our work, is to be on the front line and make the effort that we can. And God will bless all your efforts. And I'll just add one more thing, if I may, just into every doctor will tell you, and Josh, you tell me if I'm wrong. Doctors are not healers. The body has a natural healing process. It has an immunity system. Doctors can facilitate it. They can help get rid of an infection or a block or impediment that doesn't let the healing process manifest. But the healing, if the body didn't have a healing process, no doctor on the earth could be able to do anything. Yeah. It's not like you can't just go take a table and turn it into a human being. There's an element of the body, and the doctors who are good will use the medicines, interventions, or avoid things to make sure that the healing process takes hold. And if I may just weigh in, I also want to thank you all again for your miraculous work of really helping us. There's no words that can express the gratitude. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, just go to meaningfullife.com, or you can email me directly to my name, Simon, Simon, S-I-M-O-N @meaningfullife.com. And we have plenty of resources. So I just wanted to make that available as well to you, if any way I could be of help. And Josh, I want to thank you for really making this happen.